Hey guys, how are you? I hope you're well. I hope you had a good week. It looked like it was going to be spring here. The sun came out, the weekend was warm, and then, no, of course, it collapsed back into freezing rain and wind. So I wanted to make something kind of comforting and warming and sort of, you know, comfort food in a way. So what I've got here is these beautiful lamb shanks from a lamb breakdown I did the other day. So what is a lamb shank? Well, a lamb shank is just the lower leg bone from the rear leg of a lamb. And it's the tibia bone, effectively. It has slightly more connective tissue than the rest of the leg meat. And it's suited to a slower cook, whereas the upper part of the leg is much more, it could be a roast, but it could also be steaks. You could eat that quite rare. Whereas this section, this lower section, likes a little bit more cooking. Now, there's also a shoulder shank, which is the foreleg piece. But those are much narrower, they're much thinner. You can do them all together, but they cook faster than these. What I'm going to do, I'm going to season them with plenty of sea salt, as we always do, and we're going to sear those and then add our braising liquid. So they're a slightly awkward shape. You can, if you wish, sear them by just putting them into a very hot oven, but I'm going to do it in this casserole on the hob, and because of their sort of angular nature, we need to use quite deep tallow, a deep pool of tallow, and I have some lamb tallow in this casserole. Now you can sear them off in a skillet, and I'd advise you, given that we want that depth of fat, to use whatever pan you have which most closely fits them, so that the depth of the tallow is greater for the amount that you have to use. The advantage of using the same casserole that you're going to braise them in is that there's no flavour loss. You're not leaving anything stuck to the surface of another pan. Okay, so I'm going to put this on some heat and we're going to sear these off, get these searing off. Okay, so we've got this hot tallow here. I can just see it starting to smoke now. So I'm going to pop these in. I'm going to start them off on their ends like this. Why are we searing these? Why can't we just pour the liquid over and put them in the oven? Well, what's happening here is that we're getting what's called Maillard reactions. This intense heat of this tallow is causing a sort of caramelization on the surface of the lamb, and it's adding a lot of intensity, a lot of depth of flavour. It's searing that salt into a crust, and the moment that hot fat comes into contact with the surface of the meat, the water that's within the meat moves outwards, and as it hits the surface, it evaporates away. You know, this is steam coming off here, not smoke. And what's happening is it's evaporating away that water, and the you know, the myoglobin that's within it is immediately kind of adhering to the crust of the meat and caramelizing, and that's what's giving us color and flavor. You know, you'll sometimes hear chefs talking about sealing the meat, about somehow this trapping moisture inside. That's actually not true. It's nonsense. It doesn't happen, and you can demonstrate that to yourself by just searing a piece of red meat and putting it on a plate. It'll immediately leak, you know, red myoglobin liquid. Looks, you know, what people call blood, but it's myoglobin. It'll leak it all over the plate straight away, you know. So we're starting to see some color developing here. Let's just pop these down into the tallow a little bit now. See if we can develop some color there. Now while those are searing, I'm going to do some prep of the vegetables that we need. So our lamb's just searing over there. We need to keep an eye on it, make sure we don't let it go too far on one side. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to prep a couple of things that we need to go into our braising liquor. So we've got a couple of onions here. Take the end off, halve them, peel the outside. Now all this stuff, I'm going for something really simple and easy today. I'm not going in for masses of prep. I don't want to be sitting there julienning things into tiny ribbons for the rest of the day. What I want to do, I've got my bin here, I'm just going to sweep some of those onion bits off. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave most of these spices and aromatics that we're putting into this. We're going to leave them whole and then take them out at the end of the cooking process. Let's just clean that off. There we go, got rid of all those little hairy bits from the end. And all we need to do is to just roughly chop them down like this. It really doesn't matter how we do this. What the role of these onions is to add some sweetness and a sort of savoury note. We're not really too worried about their texture in this context. So, onions to one side. Let's turn our lamb. Looking good. Let's see, we've got some nice colour going on that side now. We can pop them in, try and arrange them a little bit more elegantly. There we go. Carry on, lamb, carry on. Garlic. All right. Let's take 3 cloves, and all we're going to do is squish them down a little bit. Flatten the knife on the garlic, palm on the knife, until it crushes down. And we can chuck the skins, it doesn't even matter. We can leave the skins in. So I'm not even going to bother chopping that. That's just going to go in like that. Ginger, same thing. I'm just going to take a piece, trim it, and we're just going to do this in a few slices, just enough to release its flavour, not going to fuss too much. And then we've got some chilies, a few red chilies, just going to put them in whole. Lemongrass, take the ends off and peel the outer layer away. And I'm going to just pound that a little bit, crush it down. Lemongrass and a cinnamon stick. It's going to go in whole. We've got some bay leaves. So all we're going to do is we're going to season our onions. Plenty of salt. Now let's check what's happening with our lamb. Now, what we can see here, we're getting some nice colour, but what we can see is that this inside section here is not making contact with the pan, with the fat, and it's not going to, you know, we'd have to pretty much deep fry it to get any contact going in that inside bit. Don't worry, it's got a nice bit of colour on it, you know, it's formed a bit of a crust. That's what we want to see, some flavour, some salty sort of intensity. Now, that lamb can just sit for a second, and into our tallow I am going to put, first of all, the onions. Whoop, drop in one. Now, what I'm going to do before I add anything else is I don't want this depth of tallow now. Now that I've given these onions a nice coating, I'm just going to let them soften. So what we'll do is we'll just pour off a little of the tallow. Let's put everything else in. Stir it all around. And what we're looking to do here is we just want to start smelling all of this. I want to cook this until I can smell the garlic, smell the ginger, you know, get a real sense that it's all starting to sort of meld together and create some proper flavour. Reintroduce my lamb shanks. Pop them in here. Let's get them nicely settled in on top of all this. So this is all just sizzling away now in this casserole, and all we need to do is to add our liquid. We've got these 2 cans of coconut milk here. You can see it's quite a nice creamy one. It's got the solid layer on top of coconut cream. Now let's just spread that around and we'll do the second can. Here we go. In we go. Just be careful not to let the blade of your knife touch the edge of that metal. I'm just using the back of mine. It's sloppy, I should use a spoon, but you know, let's face it, at the end of the day, we all do this kind of stuff in our kitchens. We just have to be careful to protect the cutting edge a little bit. So I'm just smushing it all around a bit, mixing some of these flavours through. It doesn't matter too much because it's just gonna all melt together. It's gonna be in the oven bubbling away. So I'm just making sure it's nicely sat in there. I'm going to go lid on and I'm going to put it into a preheated oven at about 170, 180 degrees, about 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and it will stay there for a good 2 hours, and then I'll look at it again. Okay, so our lamb has been braising away in the oven for about 2.5 to 3 hours. Took a little bit longer than I thought. I had a look at it at 2 hours and it was still just a little bit sort of milky and not quite there, but it is now beautifully ready. I have taken it out of the oven and just letting it kind of rest just to calm down. I'll show it to you now. It's absolutely beautiful. It's got this lovely kind of caramelized colour, and you can see when you kind of just tap it with a knife, it's just kind of wobbling around. It's all really nicely broken down. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let that just sit for a second, and I'm going to prep a couple of things here. So what I've got is a little piece of Thai basil, some fresh coriander, cilantro, some spring onions and some lime. So let's just chop the spring onions. So don't worry if you can't get Thai basil. It doesn't matter, I don't have to use it. It was just something I saw when I went shopping and I thought, yeah, I'm going to stick that on top of those lamb shanks and it's going to be awesome. So, you know, always feel free to add things or remove them as you wish. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut these spring onions. I like to do them just across an angle like this. You don't need to worry about getting rid of every last bit of stalk. The stalks in coriander are fine. So there we go, we've got some of that chopped. Let's just get it quite nice little finely chopped ribbons. This basil, I'm going to take the stalk down a bit, but I'm going to leave it whole. So we now have some lime, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to halve that. I'm going to chop one half into a wedge to put on our plate, and the other half I'm just going to squeeze over in a second. Now, nice butternut squash, which I just roasted in some coconut oil with a little bit of cinnamon and chili powder on it, just to go with this. I was just thinking of something, but you can have it on its own or with whatever you want. Now, let's take a shank out, and I'm going to pop it on top here like this. Show you. We're going to take some of these bigger bits out of here. Cinnamon, the chilies, the bay leaves. Those bits can all come out. And what we can do is we can just stir our sauce around a bit. So I'm going to tip that sauce into here. Smush it down. You can see all the bits of kind of lemongrass and ginger and onion. We don't need those. I'm just going to smush that through. That can go on there. Now what we're going to do is just put a little of this over the top of here. Like this. We're going to garnish it with some spring onion, with some of our coriander, and with this basil. And we're going to squeeze over a little bit of lime juice and pop this wedge of lime onto the plate. There it is, absolutely beautiful. Lamb shank, braised in coconut milk, butternut squash. Give it a go. Let me know how it goes. Stick a picture up, put it on Instagram, tag me, @Ruston's Boneyard. Have a good day, you guys.